sure that we'd be viable. So 218 and 60 students. Based on that, and the
I'm sorry, Teresa. So the 60 are ones that have documented IEPs.
Correct.
So there could be more. Is that
Correct.
what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
So we used the 218, which is lower than the actual count in case kids, there's something that happens in the next few days. So we figured those were the safest to give you an answer about the viability. So that's what we looked at. When we did that, you are financially viable. Your revenues will exceed your expenditures. You will have, besides the 2% contingency that you need to have, you'll have an additional $10,000. We also, because of those increased special ed population, added additional 2 paraprofessionals into the mix, and the mentoring service that began in a temporary basis, we are continuing, we put that into the budget for the entire year. So that's 3 mentors here during the school day for 7 hours a day. So that's actually what we put into the budget so that you would be able to continue that throughout the rest of the school year to help those. So that would give you your 10 full-time teachers, your 2 special ed teachers, 1 specials teacher, which is your PE health driver's ed teacher, principal, the counselor, and a director of student support who's able to work directly to make sure that those students are getting the services they need. There's also, we put additional money into the related services in case students, those special ed needs, those complex students need outside services, OT, PT, psychiatry, whatever it might be.
So before the LTI and counselor was 1, but now it's 2 separate, you're saying?
No, it was never 2. It's still 1. So the LTI coordinator does the counseling role as well.
And Teresa, I know we were very careful to arrange for a line of credit for the school that we would be able to call on in case those existing plans didn't fit. Does this plan change the amount that we would be, or any amount that we would be?
You're not using it at all in this budget.
So we can
This is budget based just on revenues coming in from the state and the locals based on where your special ed students as well as your actual teacher salaries. And that's the other adjustment we did, is that we now have a lot of actual amounts as opposed to projected amounts, so we put the actual dollars in. So we know what your transportation contract is. We know what your like food service costs. There are certain things now. We also took like the cleaning service bill and we multiplied that out by 12 to figure out what you're actually going to be paying before this had been projected. We use the utility bills to get a better feel for those things. We like the contracted services for sub-services. We now have a dollar figure. We said, okay, if you have, your 13 teachers who called out for 10 days, which is how much they get, and multiplied it by that, and then added a few more thousand beyond that, as opposed to just putting a random number in. So we were trying to be much more specific in the actual cost.
And so for the board's benefit, just really quick, just to address that line of credit issue. So our plan all along is to use the line of credit when we have short-term needs that are cash flow issues. So our intent is only to use the line of credit if we have an unexpected cost that comes in earlier than we expected. We can pay it using the line of credit. And then our plan that we've been working with all along with our finance lead and the school leader is to immediately pay that back. So the intent of the line of credit is not to fund operations that we don't have revenue for. It's merely to kind of cover short-term shortfalls.
I had one more question, if I might, Mr. Chair. We had heard at the last board meeting about several alternative school children who had come to us from alternative schools without the proper documentation. What resolution or how do they factor into this budget or not?
The only way they would factor in, because they are your students, would be if they are a special ed student, then we'd be getting some additional services money for them. The ratio changes if you have a a regular ed student, a basic right. Special ed, an intense, or a complex. Right. So if they fell along that spectrum, you might have gotten a little more revenue for them. And that's why we felt it was very important, based on the culture and climate and what we've been hearing from the school leadership, is having the mentors here full-time for the rest of the school year and putting that into the budget.
So Teresa, with the current students that are identified as spec ed, is I'm not sure what the how many teachers we have on board that are spec ed certified. Does it require any additional staff members? that
So
are
we did add 2 special ed paras that would help support those students into the budget.
So was there any consideration for the individuals that may not be a good fit for in-house and for advanced placement or special placement? Was that anything that was
I don't know, I don't understand what you're asking.
For example, if a student is here and they're not a good fit, whether it be for a short time or a long time, there are other services that allow for them to be specially placed.
So there is money in the budget line for those contracted services if they need be. So it's called under miscellaneous because we did make sure there's money in that.
So you guys are saying 2 different things, because you're talking about in-house support.
No, I'm talking about miscellaneous was left in case there's a child who needs outside placement to pay for that.
Any other questions for Teresa?
I've got a question, Chairman. The 218 figure that we've been given, is this, you indicated this was like an estimate down? What's our current number?
Currently, at the end of the day, it was 223.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions?
So, Mr. Chairman, based on Teresa's report, it's the opinion of the finance group. We still need to review this plan in detail. I'm familiar with it. We need to review it in the next finance committee, as we always do, of course. But our feedback is that the school has a financially viable plan at this point for continuation at worst case, the 218 student level.
So with that, I move to accept the recommendation of the treasurer that the school is financially viable. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Wonderful. Thank you, Teresa. So with the finances taken care of, I call upon our school leader, Sean Gallagher, our interim school leader, excuse me, to give an update in regards to the school culture and things being implemented to maintain
Good evening, everybody. So, I guess I'll start with describing Innovative Schools' plan for supporting the school with Tricia being out on maternity leave. So, my specific role, and the reason why I have some knowledge of how things have been going at Delaware Met is that I run the Delaware Leadership Project, which is kind of an arm of Innovative Schools. So specifically in that role, I coach Jackie Adam Taylor, who is your assistant school leader, who's been placed here through DLP. So in working with Jackie, I've had some opportunity to work with Tricia a little bit as well, and get to know some board members, and have a pretty good view of what's been happening in the school. So we're at a place right now where I would say, to address some concerns that have been voiced, we're definitely in a place where there are some clarity issues around behavioral expectations for kids in the building, and I'd say some challenges around accountability once that clarity is attempted to be put in place. So things like consequences, right, for behaviors in the building. And then there's also a push for academic rigor in the classroom that is unique to this school, given the fact that you guys have a unique model, the big picture model, which is a really ambitious model with potential for really amazing outcomes for kids, and requires, in a lot of cases, a different style of teaching. Here's what I would say to everybody. Those 3 things, and I want to say this to reassure folks, but then also be very clear about the urgency with which we need to move. Those 3 things are the 3 things that a school would struggle with when they open, right? Those are really hard things to do well. And there's a reason why a school like this exists, because there are a lot of schools that don't do those things well, right, systemically. So a school opening and struggling with those 3 things, that is actually pretty normal. It's not good enough for our kids, though, and that's why you're all here, and that's why the heads are all nodding, right? So let's talk about what's in place right now to move things forward. You guys know that there were 3 professional development days last week where I saw an unbelievable sense of unity among your teaching team here, with Jackie in the lead. Christian, of course, is part of the teaching team, and just a real sense of knowledge of that gap being there in those 3 areas, and real push by the teachers to say, this isn't good enough, we know that, what are we attacking, what are our highest leverage moves? So Jackie, if you'd like to, I'd love to have you come up and talk a little bit about the work that the teachers have done.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Jackie. So for the last 3 days, we took a step back and we all understood, there's a lot of tension because we're failing our kids, are not meeting the needs and pushing ourselves to be better. So with that, just the nature of being rebooting, increase the urgency, just being on time, being there, and one of the first pillars of being a healthy organization is building trust. And so it may have seemed odd to our staff members to start with a card thing to find about personalities, but we needed to build trust before we moved on. From that, we started to incorporate coaching and practicing. And so that looks very similar to what you would do at baseball. It felt very weird and unreal, kind of uncomfortable for our teachers. So in real time, we're at the wall, literally doing 15 reps of strong voice because we know that our classroom management wasn't there. So that they knew, and they over-exaggerated, over-practiced, that when they stopped and they looked around the room, there was a presence being met, and that they felt confident. So we're doing classroom management. In addition, for academics, we made sure there was all lesson plans required. There was written accountability in every classroom. There is a differentiated A, B, and C variation for any advisory. I will say that our building was open 7 days a week. I left here on Sunday at about 6 o'clock and people were still here. They did leave when I came back by 8:30, but I had 100% hand-in rate of lesson plans and accountability. When I sent out 6 following emails saying, listen, this is not good enough, I need to know this information, I had 16 emails between walking from here to 902 North Market Street, which is a very short distance, and they were on it. So I will say that the staff has realized the urgency, and they understand they have shortcomings, but we're getting there. In addition to that, we had 2 staff members, a counselor and math teacher, work around the clock to create a block schedule that will enable staff members like Christian, who's been it has helped us to take time out of, they will start with the block scheduling, they'll have a 90-minute work time, and they have committed to use 30 minutes of that to circle in and out of the hallway to help monitor. That would free up Mr. Wilson to run ISS, which would free up me to do instructional coaching, which makes everything better. With that being said, we've also made the commitment to call homes. So we collapsed one advisory. Every single child in that advisory got a phone call home to talk to the parent, but first it was to talk to the student. So building that one-to-one relationship. In addition, we made sure the structures in terms of climate was clear. Some of the clarity issues are still coming because it's new, but I will tell you today felt very different. Cell phones, we did a number count, we went from a 5 to 2. So now we're tracking those 2, to have the phone calls, to have the parents bought in, to make sure that they have that suspension, not because we need to believe in suspension, but we need to know, to tell our babies that we care, we're here, and we're being structured. It is always harder to implement something when it wasn't there first, but we're working every day. I will say, being in classrooms, being able to play back and forth with teachers to just correct them in the moment has become a nature for our staff. So we've become coaching all around. If I'm giving a PD, Sean may see something, and he'll be giving me real time. I am running a PD saying, hey, Sean just gave me live feedback, he's letting me know this. It's just to get better. So that we're going to start doing that every day, more and more in the classroom. So we're literally handing off back and forth between teachers so that they can start seeing that we're all a team and we're all here for academics. And then I do know we have Friday as a PD and it was already standing. We're keeping it. And we're going to go to POCs to make sure so Ed can give us some insight and talk about the structures. We talked a lot about how big picture is so structured.